It's story time, boys and girls. And for a lot of you out there, you've probably already heard this before. You've been following me long enough. And here it goes. I grew up in a parsonage in an evangelical environment. Some of you are like, "Oh, not this story again." Well, I was a PK, great childhood, loved it. I grew up in a lot of kind of Baptist circles. I remember some of the churches, even into young adulthood, maybe a lot of KJV only kind of crowd. That's what I kind of intermingled with. And I would say for the first 35, close to 40, really almost the first 4 years of my life, there was this constant fear of being deceived. And those of you who grew up in Protestantism kind of know this, where there's dozens of denominations. They'll say there's thousands. I don't really know, but you look at one denomination and how they baptize, and they're like, oh, they single dip, they don't triple dip, and they dip forwards and not backwards. Or you'll look at the triple dippers and go, oh, they recount each name of the Trinity with each dip, and they're breaking them up, and they're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to say all three and then triple dip, or things like that, right? And you're always concerned about these different denominations and how they do these things that are leading people to deception. And then something happened in my life. I discovered the first 5 books of the Bible. It's called the Torah, the books of Moses. We know them as Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And in these books is a law. There are actually 613 commands that all tie in with the 10 commandments. And I was so overjoyed to discover these, because all of a sudden I'm like, wow, Yah has a law that if you study this line for line, and we just did a year study on the Torah, going through all the commands, and we read them all over, you then understand what deception is, and how all these people are so afraid of being deceived, and yet they already are deceived. They're not being obedient. They're not following these commands, these very clear instructions of how to follow it out. And so one of the questions, and there's a point to this, and it's this: one of the questions that invariably comes up, and it came up last week, and it comes up a lot when I read from these other ancient texts, extra biblical reads, is how do we know that this book isn't a deception? Well, it's really simple, guys. Like, let me show you there. I'm on my website right now, and I want to show you this right here. You can go right here to the archive section, scroll down, and we have here something called the 613. And this right here, I'm not going to play around with this too much. You can see the 10 commandments. You can see how it's divided up in the 5 and 5, love others, love your Elohim, or love your Elohim, or love God if you prefer. And you could take each one of these commands, and you could I just jumped on the 7th commandment, and you could see all these different commands in the Torah that comes up. All right. It's amazing. I ask everybody, just spend some time playing around with this and see how all the 613 commands actually tie into the 10 commandments. And so as we read through these different books, this is what's going through my head. Do these books either agree or disagree with the Torah? Now, as we're dealing with midrashes, and I would give the same principle to any book of the Bible, either in canon or outside of canon. Does this agree with the Torah? And, with a lot of these midrashes, maybe they have a better understanding. Maybe they do agree, and I'm the one that misunderstands Torah, or maybe they don't understand Torah. Maybe I don't really know. I don't want to, but yeah, so that's the principle that we want to go with. Because tonight we're going to be looking at, we're going to be springboarding off Genesis chapter 2. I am going through a series through the entire Torah again, but not doing it in 1 year. It took us like 4 months to get through Genesis chapter 1. I may jump back into it, guys. I'm sorry. I might have to do that, but we are on Genesis 2 tonight. And before I do that, I want to show you guys this. This is, I am so excited. This is finally published. This is the Paleo-Hebrew Scriptures, the Bezorah, or the Basharah Matthew. This is the Paleo-Hebrew Gospel of Matthew. We are introducing this to you guys. It is now hot off the print, the press, is on the book, is ready to be delivered to your bookshelf. And we will be doing a line for line study through this probably in about a month from now. It gives you time to order your copy and get it and read along with us. This was the marvelous work of Pamela Glasgow and Rebecca Gold, who is our editor in these parts. They are the two women that we are supporting here at the Unexpected Cosmology. Now, if you do not know this, I want to explain that our goal is to publish the entire Bible, not just canon, but it could be some extra biblical books too. I don't know, maybe Enoch, maybe a few others. Through the Paleo Hebrew, which is a very, I would say, ambitious project to do. And we need your support. We are purely a support-based ministry, as well as, book sales as well, like this book here, Bezorah Matthew, or Basharah Matthew. And you can find links under that. We need monthly Patreon subscribers. We ask kindly that, that you consider that, you pray about it and see if you want to support us, because this project is going to be 10, 15 years. That we've already put out the first 5 books of the Bible, put out a couple others. We put out Matthew. I think Pamela's working on Joshua. I think she's working on Revelation, different books. She's working on Psalms. We're going to be putting these out. We need your support to do this. So thank you, everybody, for being a part of it. And so you could find the links for Patreon and also our GoFundMe that we have to fill every single month under here. All right. Real Men versus the Weakling. I've actually changed the title on YouTube now. It's called Night of the Soul. Real Men versus the Weakling in the Lost World of Chivalry. As you can see here, I didn't update that on this front page. Last week, I took a daring leap, and I claimed to you that I had figured out the mysteries of woman, and I was waiting to get rotten fruit. Like I was waiting to get booed off stage. It actually didn't happen. I actually think that the people who were insulted, there was a lot of people I think who were insulted last week. I think they were all men, pretty much, or maybe like very, very liberal women. There was a lot of women that wrote me this week, and they loved last week. And the idea put forward based on the ancient text that I showed was that a woman originates from heaven. Man originates from the earth. Women are from heaven. They are a heavenly kind of a type of beauty that is from above, that the earth itself is not equipped for. And so they inspire man to greater things. And so I promised to you, Yah willing, last week, or I said last week, that we would deal with the man aspect. Last week, we looked at the female aspect, and I asked 3 questions. Are you a feminist? I'm not going to go over that again. I'm going to scroll through this. I asked, are you a modern feminist? I would assume most of my readers would say no. Then I asked, well, are you a 1970s feminist? Ooh, because I think probably most women in the world today would agree with 1970s feminists. If you lived in the 1970s, you might not have, but most do today. Not only that, though, the third question was, are you a 1900s feminist? And by that, I meant like literally 1900, 1890-ish to 1920. Were you a suffragette? Do you agree with this? Votes for women. Now, I said at the time that, well, you can watch that video for yourself. I'm not giving all that away. Please go back and watch it. Let's jump forward to what I want to cover this week. Starting out with toxic masculinity. And a comment I made last week was that when we're dealing with movements of mankind, whether they're intel-based or whatever, but, in Hollywood, we're never going to find full rightness or wrongness. For example, there are things that the feminists put forward that could have been correct. They could have been based on very correct observations of how terrible maybe the overreach of the patriarchy. You see my gist? We just went through this. You guys were all live for this. I think everyone listening, this, toxic masculinity, right? This is the big phrase of feminism that they've wanted to dismember men for some time. And we saw an interesting trend in Hollywood movies recently where they're using this nostalgia bait to kind of reel us in. And I have stated many times that nostalgia isn't necessarily evil. Nostalgia could be used for good or evil. Nostalgia could be good. But they reel us in on, if you were alive as a child in the 1980s, as I was, Michael Keaton's Batman, huge ordeal. It's like one of the greatest things that ever happened when that came out in 1989. You got Luke Skywalker, of course, this is the ever brooding Daniel Craig, James Bond, probably my least favorite of all of James Bond. The guy was just depressing to be around. The guy was never happy about anything. The ladies like him because he's got muscle, but like personally, like he's got no personality. But anyways, we got, Indiana Jones here, and you can see over Han Solo getting murdered over here. And it's interesting what is happening, where they use this nostalgia bait to reel us into this patriarchy that we love, that, well, it could be idols from our past, and they systematically castrate them in front of us. They murder them off. I'll save you the trouble from seeing the most recent Michael Keaton Batman movie that came out a few years ago. I mean, I'll save you the trouble. If you don't want to know the ending, just go like this, la, 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 for the next like 20 seconds. Here it goes. They killed him off at the end. So they made a big deal about how they're bringing back Tim Burton's Batman, and they murdered him in front. I couldn't believe it. Seriously, you did that again. You did that again. You killed off James Bond. You killed off Luke Skywalker. Killed off Han Solo. Of course, we all knew that was coming. And even though, if you saw the most recent Indiana Jones, they didn't kill him off per se. But I'm telling you right now, originally, when they filmed it, all indications is that they did kill him off. And they actually had to reshoot the ending. And so you can actually see where it happens, where he goes back in time thousands of years ago, a little cartoonish, but whatever. And he's shot. You could see in his picture, he's bleeding. He's dying. He's on his way out. And he's like, you know what? I'm not going back to the future. I'm just going to die here in the past where I belong. I'm going to literally become a fossil. Get it? And you have this, super feminist girl, this kind of Mary Sue character who, like, she's just better at him at everything. Just naturally, it's like she should just wear the hat, right? Which originally, apparently, he did die, and she actually did take his hat and go back to the future and become Indiana Jones. And as they were test screening it, it got such bad, like, people were just booing how bad it was. They had to go back in and reshoot it. That actually does happen more often than not. I'm just telling you, they were trying to castrate him too. In the end, they didn't. So I guess hallelujah. I don't really know. A couple of points here I want to cover before we get into the more ancient text aspect of masculinity, true masculinity versus, whatever they're peddling, the false stuff. So bringing back beloved characters to systematically dump on the past while simultaneously creating a knockoff product, right? This is what they do. So in all these situations that I've shown you with the new Star Wars, Indiana Jones, whatever, they actually, that they literally do that. They reel you in nostalgia, bring back the old characters, murder them off in front of you, castrate them, make them out to be wussies, whatever. They've lost their manhood, and they're just trying to peddle off a new product. And it's just lazily done. They've all been caught. We all know, this is nothing. What you're hearing now is nothing original. But it's a degeneration of the past, or the degeneration of the past is a desperate attempt to elevate the present. Think about this. So it's not quite unlike hate watching or virtue signaling. They're saying like, the characters today, they are better than the character, like, look at, that, toxic masculinity from the past. We're better than that now. We're going to show you this toxic masculinity in order to virtue signal ourselves and to elevate ourselves up. But then we have something else going on in Hollywood today. You guys all have seen the memes about the Disney remakes, right? But I'm of the opinion that race swapping is actually, it's not just cultural vandalism, it's actually racism. It's we've just gone through, like, these are all DEI hires here, but it isn't interesting. Not all of these are Disney, by the way. You see the Little Mermaid there, Snow White there, which I think hit the theaters this weekend. Apparently, this is the new, they're already coming up with a third iteration of Beauty and the Beast. I thought they just did one, but apparently now she's black. And I did see the most recent Pinocchio one, and I have to say it was very disturbing when the fairy godmother came out and it was a tranny. It was very disturbing. And some of you are out there like, yeah, but no, but she's a fairy. Well, actually, she's a star, if you were paying attention, which is pretty incredible that they were putting in her face the idea that these stars are divine beings, and so on and so forth. The one that made the least sense of all in all of this was Annie. I think that's Will Smith's daughter. Doesn't make any sense. I don't think it made sense to anybody out there. It's going to be one of those long forgotten things. In fact, probably all of these will be long forgotten. And then most recently, I guess I kind of get why they went with an Indian Peter Pan, just because we're talking about British colonialism here. And yeah, maybe there's an orphan from India that decided to become the Pan Man. But again, with Tinkerbell here, so cultural vandalism is the idea that you feel that this certain type of culture is this is why it's ultimately racist. You're saying that they are not smart enough or rich enough in heritage to actually have their own stories that are interesting. So for DEI purposes, we are going to actually rob this rich history of storytelling and do this race swapping. And if you don't like that, then you're the racist. It's like reverse racism, and it's awful. This actually serves a point, because in the very literature that I will be showing you tonight, they actually point this out, that one of the greatest threats to any man or nation is this kind of cultural vandalism. This is actually a huge problem that's not just in the movies, but it's happening all over the world. Like I said, it suggests cultures don't have good stories to tell. It's lazy. So we're just going to rob and steal from people. Of course, here you see a lot of recent DEI trends in Hollywood. And I'm just telling you right now that I don't even know who most of these are. I pulled this off the internet. I'm not that deep in pop culture, guys. I'm really not. I could tell who some of these are, but isn't that interesting to see what has recently been happening? I'm seeing a familiar trend. So one of the things I want to cover tonight is chivalry and the idea of being a knight of the realm. Now, frankly, like I kind of missed out. I feel like I was born in the wrong time. I should have been born in this time. I should be putting on a suit of armor and riding on a horse with my sword and my lance and my shield. This is awesome. I love it to death. And the thing about driving a car today, it's like, I feel like in all of human history, when they were riding on horses, you're in tune with this animal and you become bonded together. This animal has a name, and this animal responds to you and speaks to you and listens to you and understands you, and you understand it. And we've lost that with the car, right? But this is one of the most esoteric, probably one of my favorite pictures, illustrations, or you would call it an illumination from the late Middle Ages that I have ever come across. And I show a lot on this channel. And so let's just kind of break down what we're seeing happening here, because this addresses what we talked about last week and what we're going to cover this week. So you have the idea that women are not from the earth, they're from heaven. And right there you see this spiritual, this royal kind of divine, feminine divine, elevated above this knight. And this knight's whole purpose is to serve this woman and to be inspired by this woman to do greater things, right? This is the purpose of women and men. The purpose of being a woman is to inspire man to be a man, and the purpose of a man is to inspire a woman to be a woman. And we could talk about the arrow on the flame there, but interesting to note is that you will rarely see knights without their horses. And when you look at a chessboard, one of the reasons why the knight is represented by typically the horse and not the knight himself is because the horse represents our mortal body. What you're seeing right here is the horse. Some of you will say it's the horse's ass. Fine, but this is the horse right here. And my knight self would be my soul. It's my higher self that I am trying to wed. This inspiration of women, right, came down from heaven. I'm trying to wed my soul into immortal self. And this is why the knight's always trying to control his horse in battle, right? That you want to be in unison together. And look what's happening when you scroll further down. It's really interesting here. They're riding on the water. It looks like water to me. And in the water are these demons. And so these demons could be real conscious entities. But what's fascinating about them being underwater is it seems to address the subconscious. That what this knight is actually prancing upon and destroying are the demons within his subconscious, right? And that's what the woman is there to inspire him to do. I love this picture. I stare at it endlessly. And let's get right into this. And I started out talking to you guys tonight about how when we look at different texts, I always want to base them on scripture itself. And if you guys come to an opinion and go, yeah, no, I actually think that doesn't line up with the Torah, cool. That is for each of us to be good stewards or Bereans, if you prefer, and to study this out. So we read last week about the creation of woman. And I don't know if I want to, I'm just going to jump ahead here in Genesis chapter 2, read this again, and we'll break into it. So we went through the creation week, and thus the Ha-Shamayam and Ha-Earth were completed, as well as their armies. And Allah-Hayam rested at the seventh age from all the works which he had made, and therefore Allah-Hayam, he did Barak, that would be the word for bless, the seventh day, and he did Kudash, he did sanctify it, because and Kudash is kind of like the word for holy. Because he then rested from all the work which Allah had arranged to do. If you guys are a little confused by this, if you're new here, just know we are reading from the Paleo translation, which we put out in our on bookshelves for you to read. These were the productions for Ha-Shamayam, the place of the names, the heavens and the earth. By the way, I messed this up. I'm sorry, Pamela. I did it shouldn't say hot earth. That's me. It's not Pamela. It was a last minute edit I did on this actual Word document as I'm getting my lesson done. So sorry. It shouldn't say that. I was looking at that going, wait, I don't remember. Is this like a Mandela effect? I don't remember that last week. I was like, no, it's not a Mandela effect. It's just my own last minute, just hastily trying to get this assembled for you guys. And over every plant of the field before it was upon the earth, and every herb of the field before he caused it to grow, even before Yahuwah, Allahayam, that be the word for God, Allahayam, the ever-living Allahayam, had scattered them upon the earth. And Adam existed not to cultivate the earth. A vapor then rose up from the earth and saturated the whole surface of the ground. Yahuwah Allahayam, the ever-living Allahayam, afterwards formed Adam from the dust of Adamaha, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of lives, and he did exist, Adam, a living Nefesh. Yahuwah Allahayam, the ever-living Allahayam, then planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he placed the Adam whom he had formed. And out of the ground, Yahuwah Allahayam, the ever-living Allahayam, caused to grow all the trees that were beautiful, excellent, and functional for food, as well as the tree of lives in the center of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. A lake also sprang up in Adon to supply the garden with water, and from there it divided and became four sources. The name of the first is the Thaya Shahwan, and flows along the land of Chahwa Yalaha, where there is gold, and the gold of the land is pure. There are also bdellium and the onyx. And the second river is the Gaya Kahwan. It flows along all the land of Kawash. The name of the third river is Hadakul, which flows through the east of Ashur. And the fourth river is the Ferith. And Yahuwah Allahayam, the ever-living Allahayam, then took the Adam and placed them in the garden of Eden for the purpose of cultivating and taking care of it. And Yahuwah Allahayam, the ever-living Allahayam, instructed the Adam, saying, for food you may eat of the whole of the trees of the garden, but from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, because in the day you eat from it, dying you shall die. And yeah, never mind. Yahuwah Allahayam, the ever-living Allahayam, also said, it is not good for the Adam to be in solitude. I will make a comforter to live with him. And therefore, Yahuwah Allahayam, the ever-living Allahayam, who had formed out of the ground every animal of the field, as well as every winged fowl of Ha-Shamayam, that'd be the heavens, took them to the Adam to see what he would name them. And whatever the Adam with the living nephash called them, that was their name. Nephash would be for soul. So the Adam gave names to all the quadrupeds and all the birds of the skies and to all the wild animals, but it was no comfort for the Adam to be with them. Therefore, Yahweh Elohim, the ever-living Elohim, threw the Adam into a stupor, and he slept. And taking one of his side chambers, he closed up the flesh in its place. And from the side chamber, which Yahweh Elohim, the ever-living Elohim, had taken out of the Adam, he constructed a woman and brought her to the Adam. And we covered that actual scene last week in the alternative book of creation. And the Adam declared, "This form is bone of my own bone and flesh of my own flesh. This shall be called Ashaha, woman, because she was taken from Ayash, man. Man shall therefore leave his father and his mother and shall unite with his covenant woman, and they shall be Labashar Akkad." I love that word, Akkad. "One in will and purpose to proclaim glad tidings. And they were naked, the Adam and his covenant woman, but they were not ashamed." Thus concludes the reading of Yah's word. Good night, everybody. No, just kidding. That does conclude the reading. But let's start getting into it now. So last week, of course, I read to you the book of Morals and Precepts. And I realized that I have to quickly, even though as a community I have introduced the Kolbrin to you. We've had a lot of talks on it, a lot of studies. I've read to you from the Book of Wisdom, the Book of Britain, the Book of Creation. We went through it line for line. We went through the book of I've covered many passages of the Book of the Illuminaries, which is the same thing as the Nazarene Gospel Collide. They're all associated together. And just a quick bullet point of what we're looking at here. So we know that during the Exodus, not all of the Israelites, or I should say the Hebrews, not all of the Hebrews went with Moses. Some of them went to different areas. Some of them went to Greece, Spain, and there was a group of them that eventually went up and ended up in Britain. You fast forward to Tia-Tephi, the princess, and Jeremiah, who uprooted the kings of Judah, and he brought Tia-Tephi over to Israel. They planted Israel there, and so we see it kind of fermenting over there. Well, there was an interesting event that happened, two actually that happened, is one, in the Acts chapter 29. A lot of you are going to flip there in your Bible and will be like, "No, there's no Acts 29 in my Bible." Well, there is the lost chapter of Acts. I believe that is completely legitimate. It actually is in my Bible. I love Acts 29. And in that, it actually recounts Paul's missionary journey to Britain, in which he encounters some Druids. And the Druids admit to him, they say, "We are the Jews. We are actually in exile. We are the Jews that came out of Egypt." At that same time, Joseph of Arimathea goes over to Britain. And the interesting thing about Britain is that it is according to all historical records, it was the first nation that became fully, it embraced Christianity, embraced the Bible. And they actually, in the Kolbrin, which is what I'm reading you from, they come from the tradition of Joseph of Arimathea. They call him the father of their faith. The blessed Joseph of Arimathea, obviously he taught them about the Messiah. And these same writers of the Kolbrin also identify as having been the Hebrews that came out of Egypt. So some interesting things to know here. So we find a lot of commonalities with these quote unquote Hebrews writing the Kolbrin, is that their God was completely against all idolatry. He hated idolatry. And they were, feverishly trying to remove all idolatry from their land. And of course, like I said, Joseph of Arimathea, let's get right into this. So that right here is going to be, we're going to start talking about man. And again, this is the book of moral and precepts, book of morals and precepts. This is not the book of creation, but you're going to see in here that they are recounting some interesting things that seem to line up with what we just read in Genesis chapter 2. "Consider yourselves, my children, and meditate on the reason for your existence and the purpose for which you were brought into being. Contemplate your powers, ponder your circumstances, discover your inescapable duties, and face your earth obligations. Assume your burdens cheerfully, for they are not imposed capriciously, The one Allahayam has set a hard task, but it is not beyond your capabilities. Remember that every affliction, however grievous and seemingly unnecessary, serves a purpose and end. This is right here one of the entire themes of the Kolbrin as a whole. This right here, they are describing to you the purpose of life. I actually want to do a whole study just on the purpose of life. But if you've been following along, women were brought here from heaven, of course, through Eve, our mother, the original mother of mankind, in order to inspire man and help him hand in hand achieve these goals. Oh man, you are the delight and sorrow of your Allahayam. You have been set apart with peculiar favor and exalted above all other creatures. He has endowed you with reason to maintain your dominion. Now, some of you will be like, we are not the sorrow of God. Well, it actually says in Genesis at the flood that he was sorry he made man. So yes, it is in truth, mankind has been a sorrow, a delight and a sorrow. That we can take that to Torah and we could say, yes, there is a case to be made for that. You see what I'm saying? Take this line for line and see if it agrees. He has bestowed upon you the faculty of speech, the wisdom, that wisdom may accumulate throughout your generations. He has exalted your mind so that it may be perceptive of beauty and grandeur. He has ordained the law. Now, I put in there the Torah because in the Kolbrin, they say that there is a universal law that comes explicitly from the creator of heaven and earth. It is, mankind may have their laws, but he has their law. And of course, in the Bible, we read of the law of Yahuwah, which in Hebrew is the Torah, right? It is uniquely from our Father in heaven. So he has ordained the Torah. I'm showing you that they agree, which circumscribes your life and adjusted your nature to accord with your duties and destiny. They're saying the whole purpose of the law is not an end in itself. The law is a tool for us to use to be a transformative document and change us into the image, I would say the image of our Heavenly Father. That is why it is here. It is a tool to evaluate our own lives, see where we fall short, and begin walking accordingly. So adjusted your nature to accord with your duties and your destiny. Yes, we all have duties and we all have a destiny that we are aspiring to, and some of us will perhaps not meet our destiny. Each man is an individual work of Allahayam. Do you not agree with that? His mind, a fragment of his will. The breath of Allahayam gives him life. The soul Allahayam, the one and only Father in heaven, formed you as he fashioned the beast of the field and the forest. He made you last. Does that agree with Genesis? Yes. The man and woman was made last. He made you last and placed you at the pinnacle of creation. Of course, and woman came after Adam, right? So she is like the pinnacle. A woman is the pinnacle of creation. Command and jurisdiction over all were given unto you. From among the creatures of the forest and the beasts of the field, you ascended in triumphant superiority, and your yoke is upon them. Be aware of yourself as the pride of Allahayam and the fruition of his desire. Nothing greater shall be created on earth than us. There will be nothing ever made, not even an AI or anything else, or transhumanism or whatever. You are the vessel containing the essence of divinity, fashioned with the clay of matter. Behold, you have even the nature of Allahayam within you and partake of his substance. What is the substance that we partake of? It is, I would say, our soul and our spirit. Remember, therefore, your superior estate. Maintain the pride and dignity befitting your position, and descend not to any man or degrading thing. Remember, my children, that every man, whatsoever his nation or estate, is a man. Therefore, never degrade anyone, for even the least among men is a candidate for godhood. Now, we're going to see they're already starting to kind of break out this true men versus weaklings, that even a weakling man, which they haven't described yet, is still a candidate for godhood. Now, some of you are like, your Christ consciousness alarms are going off right now. And I'm telling you that the Bible says that our goal is to be counted as the sons of God, right? It doesn't say we are God or that we are our own Christ or Messiah. None of that, right? But this is the goal that we are hopefully all going for, that we too can be called the sons of God, that we will resurrect and we will be brighter and higher than the angels. Correct? Yes? Candidates for godhood, or you could say sons of God. We are candidates for sons of God. Man can be whatsoever he wills, subject to the law, the Torah. So you can't be whatever, you can be whatever you will, but it has to be through the law. That is how we have to channel our destiny. There is no limitation on man's potential achievements. Shoot for the moon and not for the treetops, for nothing is beyond our reach. I'm not quite sure how they would, maybe that was actually phrased, maybe not the best way. I don't know how they would phrase that today if they were post 1969. I'm one of those guys that, when people ask me, did we land on the moon? Are you saying we didn't land on the moon? I'm like, I'm kind of one of those guys that doesn't believe you can land on the moon. Nevertheless, the concept still remains true, right? They're talking here about, ascending through the ether above the firmament. Did Elohim appear to man on earth and man cast a spear at him? He would not blast man with wrath, but admire him for his audacity. Again, now some of you are like, wait a second. I read about the Tower of Babel story here. And I think that the writers of this book would go like, yeah, that was actually pretty bad. And the tower was destroyed for a purpose. I mean, they talk multiple times in here about how the creator of heaven and earth destroyed the earth because of the wickedness of mankind. All right. So they're not saying that there is no limit to this, but I think every single one of us can look back at our lives at some time where in some way we did shake, maybe in the least shake our fist at the creator. We were angry at him. I mean, I can give you one example in my life. I'm not going to give it tonight. You guys would just have to wonder what it is. There was one time in my life where I was really angry at God. And the most amazing thing happened too, when I expressed that to him and I let him know, there's hardly been any other time in my life where I felt his love, just embracing me like a warm blanket, like just letting me know, I really love you. So take that line in that context. Such is the attitude of Elohim towards man. Thus, Elohim has made him. Therefore, is it meet that man should fawn upon him with servility? Man has the powers of reason and decision. A wise father delegates responsibility to his children, and Elohim does not unduly interfere in the affairs of man. So, talks about this all the time throughout there, that, he obviously does not break through the firmament and tell us all, interfere with our lives in that context. He has already given us the instructions. He's told us this is how you do it. Yeah. And it's basically it's our fault if we screw up. It's not his fault. We cannot blame him for our messing up. Man is the Lord of creation and the heir to godhood. He can soar to the greatest heights, but also fall to the lowest depths. No man is wholly good. This is a constant theme of the book of the Illuminators, Nazarene as well. So let me say this. No man is wholly good and no man is wholly evil. The scales are never completely weighed down. It's saying that every even the people out there that we just like boo and hiss, we're talking the very elite, according to this, there's actually good in them, that they are not wholly evil, that there is good, there is potential for them, even though they're a weak man, they're a weakling, there is potential for them to embrace the good. No man can, nor should we be surprised when very good men disappoint us. We're like, yeah, I kind of saw it coming because I know that you are not fully good. None of us are fully good. We all make mistakes. No man can hold any desirable thing on earth or attain it in the regions of light without the expenditure of effort. No man can foresee the future or know what test the wise Elohim has placed there for him. Hindsight is always key. Yah has put so many tests out there for me this year, and I think I can say I passed some of them, and I failed a few of them. And the thing about a test, as it says here, like it wouldn't be a test if you knew it was a test. Probably that's the whole point of the test, right? He springs it on you, pop quiz, and it's only afterwards you're like, wait, I was taking a test. Oh man, mark this well. Never forget your goal of godhood, or I could say becoming a son of Elohim. But vaunt not your godlikeness. For the beast this passage is amazing. For the beast dogs your footsteps, and an animal clothes your soul. It's talking about that this fleshy. So they're saying that your soul is where in your spirit, you could say, is where this God likeness is, right? And Elohim is not fleshly as we are, right? This is why he's so against idols. So this is the animal that clothes our God likeness. You dwell beneath the dark shadow of the cloud of mortal ignorance. You live in a twilight dream state. You are deceived by your senses. You dream and say this is reality. You reason and are afraid, but know that all things real reside in Elohim. And his wisdom, there's Hakamaha right there, stands beyond the bounds of reason. I love that. Elohim and wisdom side by side. He has established the foundations of truth and reality for eternity, which means his law will never change. This passage right here, about a year ago, I gave a presentation called Mary Magdalene and the Mandala, not the Mandela effect, but the mandala, like all the mandalas that we see, that the third eye we see above all the cathedrals, the Gothic cathedrals all over the earth, that you're told to pass through this mandala. I gave a big presentation on it, and some of the a medieval mystical writer who said that Mary Magdalene was the very example that we were to follow as to somebody who could ascend from beneath the dark shadow of the cloud of mortal ignorance. And he actually called it the cloud of unknowing. And in order to truly experience Elohim, you had to realize that every mortal animal, shapely thing, whatever, is you have to erase that and get rid of that. Because he cannot be confined by an idol, right? An image. This paragraph we just read right here sums up that entire book that I went over with you guys, which we actually have published in our store. It's amazing. I almost wonder if they were this writer and that writer were talking. It's the same thing, line for line. My children, man is not flesh and bone alone, but something more, something far greater than he can ever conceive at present. The eagle soars in the air above, not knowing that soon he will descend to earth and rise no more. The lion is unaware of the worms that will consume it. I mean, try to, rationalize that with the lion, right? He's like, he's not going to get that. And the ox knows not of the slaughterhouse. We see this in memes a lot, right? Like the conspiracy theorist, cattle that's trying to tell the others and they don't believe them. The ass knows not of the use of food, though its teeth chew the grasses and herbage. Something is added to mere man to raise him above the beast. Something else exists within the space of his body. It is his soul. Is not the mortal substance of the body less perfect when the soul has departed? Now it will decay and fall apart. But is this not because the animating ruach, or the spirit, is no longer there? The immaterial spirit has gone. Whence has it flown? It sounds like the book of Job right here. The spirit departs, taking life and consciousness with it. That which came from the abode of spirit has returned there. So again, that agrees with what I've shown with pre-existence, Book of Jubilees, others. We all originate from above, and we will then return to that same abode. It says that, we return to the Father, but I would say it's the same thing. The Father in the realm of the spirits above. That which Elohim gave of himself has returned to its source. Man, the receptacle of God and beast, has surrendered apart at the touch of death, and each returns to its own. Man is the highest of the beasts and the lowest of the gods. Man is the battleground of beast in God. I think that's amazing right there. Man is the battleground of beast in God. What an amazing line. All right, so let's start talking about the real man. We'll see how far we get tonight. One of my goals and aspirations was to actually go through an actual list of rules for knights, chivalry, which was really awesome. I don't think we'll get there tonight. Well, let's get right into this. And I just want to point out to everybody that, last week when I talked about the two types of women, that some people some women were really excited about it. Some were a little bit disheartened. It's the same thing with this. Like, if you find yourself being described in terms of the weak man, you take it to heart in a way that, like, I can't control my past. There's nothing I can do about my past. I have made decisions that I regret those decisions. I'm affected by it now, but I do have control of my future. I can still get back on course, and I can decide to be a real man. And some of you might have preconceived notions of how they describe the real man. You might be surprised. Man is divided not only into nations, peoples, tribes, and creeds, but also broadly in twain. There are among all men, all peoples, two kinds of man: the real man and the weakling. Buckle up. Let me take another drink of coffee. We're going from 0 to 60 in no time at all. Those who are neither wholly one nor wholly the other, nevertheless tend towards the nature of one or the other. So you might see some things in here like, yeah, like I totally agree with that. Like I got the real man attributes there. Oh man, I got some weakling traits there. And so they just said here that's going to happen a lot, but you're going to tend to go towards one or the other. And this same text talks about our soul when we die. It's the same thing. Like, no man is fully good or evil, right? But you're going to tend to go towards the light or darkness. Same thing. So consider the real man, the man who reaches out towards godlikeness. So they just told you what a real man does. You are aspiring to be a son of Elohim. That is the definition right here of a real man. And remember what the definition of a real woman is for a woman to inspire a man to become a man, a real man. So we see them both in play with each other. He is the man in whom Elohim has succeeded. He is Elohim's elect. He is like unto a spreading tree planted in black soil, which blossoms quietly and doubles the yield of its fruit in the summer. This sounds very Hebrew, doesn't it? It sounds like one of the parables that might be told by Messiah. Its fruit is as a delight to the mouth and fills the stomach with satisfaction. Beneath the canopy of its foliage, the weary find a pleasant refuge from the heat. In its shade, all men find peace and contentment. The weakling is like a tree whose leaves wither before the heat of the summer sun, whose fruit never reaches maturity, for it falls to the ground unripened and trampled underfoot. Men avoid it, and the axe is laid against the bowl. This is purely parables of Messiah right here. Now, I just said that, when you talk about the real man versus the weakling, immediately we think of like these big, huge, muscular arms and, like arm wrestling and Schwarzenegger and all that. It's like, no. They're not talking about any of that here. They actually do not talk about that. Very little. They could say a weakling could be a very strong physical person as well. This is like the parable of the farmer who's with the seeds. And a weakling would be somebody who they spring up right away, and people turn to this person and go, wow, this is a charismatic person. This person has all the answers. And then they just wither in the heat of the sun. They fall away. This is people who, their fruit just never comes to fruition spiritually. You try to feed them, you try to water them, you try to give them soil, you throw the seeds in the field, and they just, it doesn't happen. It's just rotten fruit. O real man, filled with the calm of strength, you are the true image of Elohim on earth, which is what we're called to be. We're called to be representative images of our Creator. Yours is the noble life, And your reward here shall be a body preserved in youthfulness. When in the fullness of time you make the great journey westward. That's kind of interesting. This is a little Lord of the Rings here with the elves going west, making the journey westward. Then shall your soul arise in the mysterious beyond, radiant in a glory undescribable. The way I actually take this is that they're saying that you're imagine you're in Britain, you die, your body rots, and your soul actually takes a journey west. And I've said this, that I'm kind of the opinion that, that when we die, there's a bit of a journey involved. I don't know if there's like some spirit boat that comes up and everyone jumps on and you go riding off down the ocean, or you go walking off some trail. I don't really know. I believe that our guardian angels are with us. I do believe we go in the presence of Yahuwah, but there's something about that. And so that this book seems to give the impression that these spirits migrate to the west, somewhere way out in the west. That's where they go. It ties in with my hidden wilderness research as well, even though throughout that I show all the references to the north. This is the curveball here. They don't say to the north, they say to the west. Depending on, we could really get into what their directions were like back then too. For the west for them was the land beyond the setting sun. So it was outside of the circuit of the sun. And they say that in other places. Behold the uprightness of the real man. Is he not the father of the orphan and the husband of the widow? Oh my goodness, they are just describing the very character in the heart of Yahuwah and our Father in heaven. He is the father of the orphan and the husband of the widow. He cares for the widow. He provides. He is, and for the orphan, for the poor, the destitute. That is the goodness. That is the fruits manifest of the real man. The brother of the forsaken and the guardian of the fatherless. Do not the friendless find in him a friend and a poor a benefactor? It is not hard to give to the needy within reach or to help the weak when they are at hand, but the real man works not in such narrow confines, for he stretches out his hand to those beyond. So it's not like what they're saying here is like, yeah, I mean, it's great, when you are walking down the street and you flip a nickel or a quarter or a dollar or whatever, you crack open your wallet, give a couple of bucks, because he's kind of right there. I think what they're saying here is that the real man, because you could like virtue signal with that. Like, look at me, look what I'm doing. When you go to the grocery store and they're like, do you want to, round up to the dollar? I'm like, no, I don't want to give 25 cents to, I don't even know what that's going to. It just fills some fat cat's pocket just to make me feel good. They're like saying, no. The real man goes out of his way to be like, what can I do to take care of the poor, the needy, the orphans, the widows? Such men stand out among others, not only because of their qualities, but because of the respect which others feel bound to accord them. A great man is no less great, though he lie prostrated and vanquished in the dust. And this is they're basically saying here that you can be handicapped, you could be older and weak, you can still be a great man. It doesn't mean you're a weakling. Just because you have a handicap, that does not make you a weakling. And you think of Moses with his, if he did have a talking problem, and he overcame that at the end of the Torah. The last chapter of the Torah is beautiful. The real man accepts both victory and defeat for what they really are, a challenge to his manliness. So they're saying here that you could lose in life. You could lose everything. But if you understand that this is a test and it is a challenge to who you truly are as a real man, it doesn't make you any less of a real man. I started out showing you movies. I almost showed you Rocky. Rocky is one of my favorite movies of all time because it is pure anthropology of what it is to be a man. And a lot of people don't remember this, but in the first Rocky film, as well as Rocky 6, in the first Rocky film, Rocky loses. He loses, but he loses so amazingly that most people, they didn't even realize it. As far as the crowd is concerned and the audience in the theater, he won. Because in his whole thing is that it's not about winning. The idea of what it is to be a man is to see how far you can push beyond your limitations. Remember, like that line they said, reach for the moon, shoot for the moon, or, go over the moon or whatever. It's the same thing. He says in his movies, that the point of his matches is that no matter how often you fall down, you pick yourself back up and you move forward. You fall down, you pick yourself up and move forward. It doesn't mean you're going to win the match, but you're, seeing how far you can push yourself, test yourself. And that's, that is like the experience of what it is to be a man. The real man stands apart in greatness because of its outstanding qualities, his love of truth and justice, and his hatred of meanness and deceit. How many of us can identify with that? I mean, why are you in this game? Is it because your love of truth and you want to see justice come upon the wicked? Yes. Yes, I hope we're all here because we want to search out the truth. And we have a hatred of deceit. We hate the liars. We hate, we hate the lying. We hate it. If you're like content with the lying, which I don't think anyone might, I have a small audience. I don't think anyone is. But, people are like, yeah, maybe they did lie about the moon landing. I don't really care. It doesn't do anything for me, whatever. Think of that big psychodramatic episode we just went through a few years ago that was worldwide and orchestrated and faked. Though great men make great events, even as great events call forth great men, they are not always the children of fortune. Success and acclaim do not always attend their undertakings. So what they're saying here is that physical wealth, success as we see in this world is not what they're talking about here necessarily about good fruit. But whether they rise or fall is of lesser importance than how they rise and fall, right? Think of that Rocky match. It is not what a man does that makes him great, but what he strives to achieve. That line there kind of reminds me of, if you guys remember Batman Begins. I'm not going to like speak like Batman and curl his lips for you guys, but think of Christian Bale. He's up there on the rooftop talking to Katie Holmes, and he's like, it's what a man does, or what I do that defines me, right? And that was back in my Protestant days. Like, no, that's not true. It's about grace. Well, no, actually, the grace is here so that we can actually if we have the grace of our Father, it means that we are actually acting graceful. We are doing great things for His kingdom. We are producing good fruit. And as you can see there, it's about striving to achieve. It's okay if we fail. But even if you don't achieve your goals, what is it that you're striving to achieve? That's the difference. That's what they're saying here. The greatest men have no memorial if their endeavors were unpopular or not crowned with success. For every great man with a memorial, there are 1,000 unknown and unhonored. I mean, how many of you out there are like, you just feel like you're ignored and no one's paying attention to you, and you see these other people doing the same things that you're doing, and you're like, when is, every dog's supposed to have his day, right? When is my hour supposed to come? They're just saying, like, don't be discouraged by that. It doesn't mean that you're any less of a man. It just because this one person got recognized and you didn't. The real man remains unperturbed by the whims of life. He does not flinch before misfortune or ease his head when fortune smiles upon him. And this is the great trap they talk about. A fat country, a wealthy country makes effeminate men. It makes weakling men. And so that very line there, that fortune smiles upon you, it doesn't mean you are becoming lazy at that time. You're not easing your head. When misfortune descends upon his head and his hopes and dreams are shattered, all those things that you were, aiming for, and you're like, man, what happened to this? Is this rotten fruit? What happened? He does not go about lamenting in a loud voice, but quietly continues his daily task. You've fallen, but you get back up and just go at it again. If fortune is gracious towards him, he braces himself and is not overwhelmed, for he knows that often it takes a better man to bear the bounty of fortune than to bear the burden of misfortune. I'd say that's true. I mean, I think that, that there comes great power, comes great responsibility, right? Maybe it's a pre-existence thing. Maybe there's reasons that some of us, I speak of myself, I speak of all of us, we're in a state because maybe it's the mercy of our Father who knows there are some things we can't handle. He's like, you know what? I'm not giving you that recognition. I want you to keep at your task, but you're not going to see the reward in this lifetime because you can't handle it. I know that. And I care for you as a father. Someday you'll get all the answers. You'll see this, but right now you're going to have to question why you're so unsuccessful. And you're just going to have to struggle through that. And just know that I love you and I care for you. And that's why you're in this predicament. The spirit of the real man does not bow before, did I just read this? The blows of misfortune. No matter how grievous its afflictions, his calmness deflects its arrows, and his fortitude breaks its thrust. The shield of cheerfulness and the sword of courage he never discards in despair. His contentment is not dependent upon the whims of capricious fortune, and therefore he is not cast down by her indifference. Like the metal measure, he is unchanging under all stresses. And one of the ways I would phrase this that you've heard me talk about a lot is that you have to find joy in your servitude. If you do not find joy in just being a slave of Christ, loving him and serving our Father in heaven because you love our Father in heaven and you want to be obedient to him and you want to conform to his image, and that's what it's about, guys. It's not about the reward. If you do not love that service, then we might not make it. And that's really important to know. So in that context, the reward is actually the service itself. That's the pleasure. Like the metal measure, he is unchanging under all stresses, but the weakling, like the balances of the scales, is always moving up and down. The real man stands before adversity as a rock before the raging seas, firm in the midst of turmoil, solid and calm against the fury. His mind forms great designs, and his spirit delights in their execution. His ideas grow up. They are never stillborn. That's kind of an interesting way to describe ideas, as being a stillborn, right? Like dead on delivery. They are never dead on delivery. They are never stillborn, nor do they wither before maturity. The examples of great men shine before him as visions in the night, and their precedents walk with him by day. His high-hearted love of life exalts the spirit within him. There it is right there. I just talked about the joy of our servitude. The high-hearted love of life exalts the spirit within him. You do this because you just love this life. He strains at the traces and is impatient for the run. He rises above the rock of opposition and splits it in twain, as does the sapling. That is such like a Colburn text right there, where they say this whole world is here to train us, to test us, to conform us, right? And to make it kind of difficult on us to overcome. So that's the whole idea of splitting in twain the rock of opposition, leveling out the earth, building roads and highways and that kind of stuff. He is like a great oak, which rises above the shrubbery in the darkness and shakes out its branches in the glory above. That reminds me of Psalm 1 right there, the tree that's planted by the water. It's beautiful. He has compassion on the blind man. He helps the lame man, and he guards the deformed and afflicted against the mockery of weaklings. And that might not just be physicality there. It might not be saying that he's just has compassion on physical blind men or physical lame men or physically deformed men. That might be saying that he has compassion on the spiritually blind man, the spiritually lame man, the spiritually deformed. He has compassion on them, recognizing that they have the potential to be great. He carries himself with the dignity becoming a man. He remains unshaken in calamity. Deceits and hypocrisy are things far beneath him. And this is why the weak man is okay with it, but the real man hates it. He has an air of quiet confidence and courage to speak the truth, even if it's just you against the whole crowd, right? You're a real man, a strong man is one of those that you could be standing against a million other people. I mean, think about for those of you out there that you actually didn't wear masks during that big psychodramatic planned event that was faked in the media. And you went out there and everybody is staring at you. You see all eyes on you, and you are bravely walking without that mask and you are speaking the truth to them in that moment, because you know you have done your research. I mean, you've already sought out the truth, and you know what the truth is. And that is it. And there are many, I'll say it, many weak men who put on that mask out of fear. And I give this story a lot. I learned in France when we were living there for a short time. I know, like, people are like, oh, there's another, that time Noel was living in Europe story. But I learned that the French people have a habit of, if anybody was alive during the Second World War, you speak to any French person. Now they're almost all dead at this point, the World War II vets. But apparently they were all in the French underground. Every single one of them. You will not find a single French person who is not in the French underground. And you're like, really? Does that really stack up with history? Because I'm pretty sure just about every single one of them were doing their hail salutes on the side of the road as the tanks were rolling down, and very few of them were in the French underground. But I'm finding this now, the further away we get away from that psychodramatic episode, I keep meeting more and more people that are like, I never wore a mask. I'm like, really? Really? Because I went all over the country and I barely saw a single soul without a mask on. I'm not saying that to boast or anything. I'm just saying that I feel like it's going to be the same way in this country, where all of a sudden when they realized they were on the wrong side of history, they all pretended like they were, seeking the truth, and they had done their research and they stood for truth. But those of you who really stood for the truth, you know who you are. The thoughts of his heart are the words of his mouth. I love that line. It's just whatever proceeds from your mouth. It's not what goes into you, right? But what comes out of you. It's your pure heart or your rotten heart, your circumcised heart or your stiff heart. The thoughts of his heart are the words of his mouth. This is why if you're a crass talker, you have a crass heart. And whatever he promises is as good as done. That sounds like the Bible. I mean, it's like, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Just do it. Don't swear on certain things. Just do it. Or say Yah willing, and just do it. The real man is he who serves the purpose of Allah Hayam and carries out his plan. And what is, first and foremost, what is the plan? What is the will of Allah Hayam? This is something that growing up in the Protestant church, we all sat around going, what is his will? We didn't know. Do we go to Del Taco or Taco Bell or McDonald's or In-N-Out? Like, what is his will? It's like, guys, just read the first 5 books of the Bible. This is why I started out talking about this. His will is in there. It's there. And when you realize that his will is spelled out for us in the Torah, and that all we have to do is be obedient to him, and you're like, wow, that's easy. All those questions I had before, they all just fade away. So again, the real man is he who serves the purposes of Allah Hayam and carries out his plan. And again, that's kingdom living. All right. So if you're questioning that, it's like, if you live according to the law, you are living according to the kingdom. Imagine a world if everybody lived according to the Torah and obeyed it. That would be heaven on earth. Just letting you know. Kick and scream against it all you want. That is heaven and earth on earth. Because of him, all men rejoice for what they are, and the weakling, he carries his burden, meaning that the real man carries the burden of the weaklings. Isn't that true? The crown of glorious manliness is on his head. The mantle of courage is about his shoulders. He stands out from others in the pride and glory of his manhood. They're not talking about that kind of pride. You know what I mean? The weakling pride. He treasures womanhood and the dreams of men. And so by treasuring womanhood, right, you treat women differently as men. Yes, it is a double standard, because you recognize that women are not men. They are a heavenly creature, and they are to be, you don't crass talk around them. You don't act around them certain ways. You guard them from certain things. And that's how you treasure. You treat the women like real treasures. The way you would treasure physical items, you treat women better than that. He is the master of earth and the Lord of creation. Nothing more is required of man on earth than that he be a real man. I agree with that. I mean, if they're defining the real man as living out the kingdom according to the law of our Creator, then I would agree with that. This is sufficient. This is sufficient, objective, and difficult enough for any man to achieve. It takes a lifetime. Manhood is a state of freedom, 100%. Just like living in sin is living in bondage. Living according to the Torah is living in freedom, right? It means you're not transgressing. Manhood is a state of freedom. Like we would say that Yahushua HaMashiach, Messiah, Jesus Christos, he is a true man, right? He is a true man in every form. And he was the total example, the capstone example of freedom. But its stronghold is the spirit of a man. The body may be held forcibly in bondage, but the spirit cannot be shackled. He who lies in prison in the lowest dungeon may be more free than he who walks above with a servile spirit holding him in thraldom. Think of Joseph right there. He was more in freedom, I guess you could say, in that instance, in his spirits, in his servitude to the Most High. Servility is the brand of the weakling. Never judge a man according to his estate or circumstances, but accept him as a man according to the states of manliness, according to everything that's been described so far. He that is manly, hold as a man, even though he be your enemy. But he who is less than a man, hold accordingly, though he be with you. For were your enemy a lesser man, he might proffer a hypocritical friendship and thus destroy you by treachery. It is well never to forget that some friends might be enemies were they better men. Therefore, the measure of a friend's manliness may also be the gauge of his sincerity. A real man does not debase or humiliate the manliness of a defeated foe, for in so doing, he reveals his own baseness. I mean, this is like straight up chivalry right here. It is well to remember that he who fights against you does so in the light of his own truth, and truth is not the pawn of battles. A real man is, and that's like a obviously a chess reference right there. I would think, and I went through that whole thing on how esoteric chess is and how every single piece. When you recognize that every single piece in chess represents a different element of you, who you are, not physically, but your mind and your spirit and your soul, and understanding that the king itself is your very life, right? And it's kind of interesting, right? So the truth itself is not a pawn. It should never be used as a pawn. This is what weak politicians will do. A real man is hardy, tenacious, and brave. He is gentle with women and hardy with men. He disciplines himself according to the manly code. So again, you cannot be a real man unless you discipline yourself, right? So you take this, and instead of getting offended at what you're hearing, go, I don't like that. No, I'm leaving. Smash that unsubscribe button. You go like, okay, man, I've fallen short. I'm going to discipline myself. It's the same way as going to the gym, but on a spiritual level. You don't get those. You go to the gym and you see that guy like lifting the weight, the curl. He's curling like a dumbbell and he's like kissing his arm in the mirror, as he goes up each time. You don't get to that by just, you don't go from flabby to that by just showing up a couple times a week, right? And it's the same way with our spiritual life, right? It's a discipline that you have to repeat daily for a very, very, very long time before you can become that real man on that kind of level. He is generous and hospitable. He is alert and audacious. Comfort and temperance and overindulgence make weaklings. So this is describing the West today. Again, comfort and temperance and overindulgence make weaklings. Think about the American story, whether you accept it as true or not historically, that you have these dudes from Europe coming over to these wild lands and cultivating it and chopping down forests and making roads and villages and overcoming all odds. And it was a strong nation. And then look where we're at today, right? Dudes playing PlayStation all day. Even like our grandparents' generation, And my grandparents' generation, they went and fought the war. On both sides of my family, they all went and fought the war. And I remember growing up, every time I went to my grandfather's house, he served in the European theater of the war. For him, like the model man was John Wayne, but really for that whole generation. And every time I went to his house, I knew he was going to sit me down and show me some film from the John Wayne catalog. I probably almost went through the entire John Wayne, including the John Ford catalog. But that was you think of that, like compared to John Wayne to like the dudes today, you could see a big difference, right? Struggle, adversity, and self-control make real men. So you have to struggle. You have to. If you've got comfort in life, you're never going to get there. A real man is a real man, and no power outside himself can take away his manliness. He is upright and strong with a full measure of respect for himself. He is a man of deeds and not an idler. In manner, he is quiet and discreet. He has prudence in all things, and with all these qualities go generosity, good nature, and reserve. Isn't that interesting? Hardworking, but very generous to give that hard work, that fruit to others, because you want to see them come to greatness as well. Be not a loud-mouthed bag of wind, for quietness within a man is as a rock, against which the tempest-driven waves of wrath and rage, rashness and haste dash in vain. It is far easier to be a weakling than a real man. Would anyone disagree with me on that out there? It is far easier to be a weakling than to be a real man. Of course, we haven't covered the weaklings yet. We're about to. Were the earth less harsh or the circumstances of life less austere, man would destroy himself before the shrine of the languid goddess, this is why I started talking about the decadence, the age of decadence of art, and how they're literally destroying art in front of us, as just mankind collapses along with it, as mankind has become decadent and lazy. This is why masculinity is toxic now, right? Because maybe people who really are lazy and they're weaklings and they don't know what it is to work hard and to overcome. They look at these people and they're like, this is toxic. I don't want this, Only real men can only real men can with safety destroy the tangled forest and wilderness of earth and make from them gardens. But will those who inherit the gardens be real men? You could even take this into the millennial kingdom, guys. You could look at those beautiful big cathedrals they built, how they landscaped the land, and they built these water channels. And we've all looked into that. And, water everywhere, beautiful gardens, and then people inherited it, destroyed it, didn't appreciate it. The Torah decrees that they must be, or the wilderness will reclaim its own. He who would live in a garden must labor in the sun and subdue the soil. He who is content to live in the wilderness may sleep in the shade, but he is a slave of life. I don't think that's I think that's metaphorical too. I don't think that's strictly talking about actual gardens and wildernesses. I think it's talking about the wilderness of the soul. The real man stands out above all others. His head is high, his footfall firm. For a second there, I thought his football firm. But no, his footfall firm. His bearing is dignified, his face calm, his hand steady, his heart tranquil. I mean, no matter the circumstances, he's like, I got this. We can do this. We can overcome. We're not going to fall in despair. He sweeps aside all obstacles in his way. He proceeds through all the dream fiends and powers of darkness, seek to bar his way. And you're going to find that, right? That the more, it's like this duality, the more righteous you become, the more you're going to recognize this darkness around you. It's kind of interesting how that works. Where is he who can gather the real men together and make them rulers of all men, that earth may resound with glory and greatness? That's the dream of the millennial kingdom right there. Chapter 7, the weakling. Here we go. The burden of the real man and the shame of the earth is the weakling. He frustrates the plan of Allah Hayam and degrades all men. The weakling is wicked of heart, for wickedness comes easily to men. It is easier to be wicked than to be good. It is easier to be weak than to be strong. The weakling is one who takes the easy path. And it isn't interesting, like, as we clearly can see how lazy societies become, how entitled societies become, this same society is embracing wicked things like witchcraft, for example, and they're saying that it is good. And it's like that's interesting, because you can see that connection, that to a weak person, wickedness is actually good. Interesting how that works. The nefesh, or the soul of the wicked man, is wrapped in a winding sheet of hate, and corruption eats his heart, or his spirit, excuse me. He mocks, for mockery is an overspill of poison brewed in little hearts. Think about, like, if you're out there seeking truth and people mock you for that, they mock that truth. This is what's called not casting pearls to swine. You do not give the treasures, the mysteries of heaven, to mockers, right? To the weaklings. The real man would rather be hated than mocked. For while men hate, cowards mock. The weakling fawns upon the rich and strong. He oppresses the weak, and his joy is the molestation of widows and the unprotected. He cannot show respect for anyone greater than himself, for all men are his superiors. And I'm going to just point out here, what they're pointing out is a huge definition and a contrast between conservatives and liberals. Liberals, in their ultimate virtue signaling, they say they care for life, and they care for the widows and the orphans, all this kind of stuff. And guess whose job it is to take care of them? It's the government. The government needs to do it. And of course, they will say, they will say that, for those who are pro-life and they don't want abortion, they will point out, well, those people don't, those people need to take care of the orphans. Then it's their job to take care of all those babies that aren't aborted. And it's like, really? Like that's not what this is about. Well, that's not what this is about at all. But those people just want the government. But the conservatives are like, no, we actually do want to take care of the widows. We don't want the government. That's not their job. It is our job, because we can do it better. It is our job to take care of the widows and the orphans. That is our task in life. That is the purpose of being here. That is part of our task and our test. Are we just shoving it to a government and being wicked in doing so? You see what, like, they're totally painting this here. The difference between wicked and righteous people is how they feel about the destitute. He cannot show respect for anyone greater than himself. That explains the entitlement of almost everybody today, and how, like, there is no respect for authority anymore at all, even in ministries or whatever. Like, everybody isn't equal. I see this a lot in the biblical community today too, especially the movement of, it's up to each one of us to read the Bible for ourselves, which is 100% true. That's what we should do. But I find that there is a counterbalance where there's like no respect for anybody else. They respect themselves and what they're able to discover, and everybody else needs to bow down to that. I see that all the time online. They don't advertise it that way, but I see this. For all men are his superiors. Therefore, he shows a hypocritical respect only when profitable to himself. He cringes before the powerful and wrecks his will upon the helpless. His face is pressed into the dust before the seats of the mighty, but his foot is heavy upon the necks of the lowly. Goodness and duty are beyond his understanding, inasmuch as the evil in his nature corrupts his spirit and renders him incapable of worthy deeds or noble service. The weakling is one in whom evil destroys the good. In the real man, goodness vanquishes evil. Right? And this is why I showed you the illustration of the illumination of the night, with the lady on top of him coming down from heaven, showing him the way, and he is mastering his mortal body on the horse. What is this horse doing? It's trampling on the subconscious below the surface of the water and fighting those demons. And that, this is where narcissism comes from, right? That a narcissist cannot see the subconscious below the surface. He only sees his reflection. And therefore, if he can never get past his own reflection, he will never actually achieve the God state that he wants to, and he will ultimately drown in the water. That's the story of Narcissus. But a real man can see those demons, the darkness below the surface of his own, his dream state, his subconscious, whatever, and he can conquer those. In the hour of danger, the weakling quails. His feeble spirit wilts and his thoughts are confused. Everything he does is confounded. In the day of misfortune's blast, he sinks into the morass of cowardice and is overwhelmed by the black mire of despair. Abandon him to his fate, lest he drag you down to destruction. You can almost think of this like if judgment type of thing befalls America, right? And it's the judgment is coming for the weakling, and you kind of have to. It's almost like Noah in the boat, right? He pleads with people, tries to get them on the boat, and then the day comes like, all right, gonna leave you to your own destruction. I'm not gonna let you drag us down, right? The very fear of a coward attracts the attention of misfortune and exposes him to danger. By quailing under poverty, he succumbs to meanness, and by tamely bearing insults, he invites assault. He feasts on the misfortunes of the weak and unprotected. The carcass left by the lion feeds the hyenas. Destruction follows in his footsteps, for it is easier to destroy than to build. There is no respect for his person or possessions, and his wife is open to the leers of fornicators and jeers of her sisters. We saw this last week with the wayward wife, or the woman that the weak man who marries a woman that is not wife material. She's a common woman. That's what they're describing here. The weak husband is very generous in that he offers his wife basically to everybody, in how she dresses and how they all look at her and lust and that kind of stuff. The weakling is not one weakened body. This is key right here. This is what I was saying earlier. The weakling is not one weakened body. He could be a very strong person by all appearances, but one who is weak in spirit. And you could say the flip with the strong man. He could be maybe he could be physically weak, right? I mean, he could be someone who could be taken out in a back alley, but his spirit is what makes him great. Neither does strength of body make the real man, for manliness is of the spirit, not of the flesh. There it is. A weakling will even marry a common woman. I just described that, whose husbands are 500, for his servile spirit rejoices in debasement. Mankind is, I think of, I won't go there. You guys all know the wife that undressed herself on the red carpet a couple months ago. Mankind is divided in twain. Real men and weaklings, take your place with one or the other, for they will never be reconciled. Great way to end that. Now, for lack of time, I'm going to be skipping through some of these chapters, chapter 8 and some of the others. What they do is like you see here, attitudes of the real man towards the poor and weak. We could look at this some other time. Maybe I'll refer back to it. Attitudes towards wealth of the real man and the weak man. They're going to contrast them. Towards servants, they go through all these. Towards superiors, all great material. Towards the wrongdoer, you see the unstable man here. Maybe I'll read this real quick. I'll skip the mean man. Just don't be a mean man. But let's read a little bit about the unstable man, because this is kind of interesting. So there is a man halfway between the real man and the weakling. And that they just told you to choose sides. Be one or the other. Don't be in the middle. But there is a man in the middle, and you don't want to be him. He's the unstable man. He wavers and is undecided, and thinking he displays a woman's weakness. He wrings his hands in the face of calamity and makes no move. Take hold of yourself. Be a man. You can imagine like shaking, then say, just be a man. Just come on, like just do something. Take a position or something. I say that all the time, that at the end of the day, a man kind of has to have a position. You just, it's okay to be, don't be afraid to be wrong. You might be wrong. Just take a position on something and just learn. Though now you have a body given over to weaknesses, the soul within has a reserve of revolution. Call it forth, and it will serve you well. It's calling on that unstable man between, like just call on that soul within you, that divine self. It will lead you to the Godhead, right? In this context, becoming a son of God. All right, I'm gonna. That was good there. That was enough of that. But let's jump ahead. Once again, I'm going to be skipping this on family relationships with daughters. I mean, I hope you guys are enjoying this because this is a incredible read. Ooh, Secrets of Womanhood. I bet that's pretty spicy. I want to cover on a little bit of knighthood here. So right here, this comes from the Book of Britain. The Book of Britain is, if I had to describe this book, it is the sequel to the Book of the Nazarene. For those of you out there that have read it, I prefer calling it the Book of the Illuminators, though it is famously again known as Gospel Collidi. And so, in the four Gospels in canon, we have the Book of Acts. And the Book of Acts, it starts out with kind of Peter and John, as you know, and then it goes into the adventures of Paul. Well, what this does is that the Book of Britain delves into the adventures, the future adventures of Joseph of Arimathea. Some of it's pretty epic, but it starts out in the first several chapters, and then it starts going into code of conduct at the end, and all based on presumably the teachings of Joseph of Arimathea. And this is what we see here with ladies and knights. I think you guys will enjoy this. Nobility and honor are words much abused, but in truth, nobility is not bestowed by birthright, but resides in the soul. And honor is not a thing bartered among kings, but comes from a sense of goodness. So it's saying that it doesn't really ultimately matter what your genealogy is, where you come from, especially when we get into like the serpent seed discussion, which I hope to get to real soon. It doesn't matter where you came from, who your mommy and daddy were. They could have been like great people, but the apple can fall far from the tree, right? And it's up to you to choose your nobility of your soul. Men sell their honor for gold, right? You could say they sell their soul for the devil, right? Or to the devil, or Esau sold his soul, basically his birthright, for a bowl of soup and a loaf of bread. People will sell their souls or their birthrights for very little. Men sell their honor for gold, and nobility is conferred on those who have done nothing more than their duty. This is wrong. When titles are given as the reward of true selfless service, and remember they said that many of us will never get this reward, okay? But that's not the way it necessarily should be always. When he who serves his fellows well is ennobled, both giver and receiver are raised in stature, and the realm benefits. When they who inherit titles also inherit the virtues which earn these, then all is well. But when he who inherits, to whom they descend, is unlike he who earned them, then they can no longer be born with honor. You see what they're saying here? That maybe your mommy and daddy were super virtuous and they received all sorts of rewards. They got the Medal of Honor and everything, or whatever, right? They've been made a knight of the realm, like sir, mommy and daddy. And that's great. Maybe this is passed down to you. Maybe you've got their riches, their house, their estate. You are a governor of servants, but like you don't deserve it if you don't have that same nobility of soul. It's saying that your parents have that, and that's why they earn that. That doesn't mean that you have it. It's up to each one of us. Honor, nobility in their true sense are not things which can inevitably be inherited. Got it? They are not in the blood. The man who, being without merit himself, appeals to the actions of his ancestors for his justification is like a thief claiming justification as possession. And this is happening today, right? Where you have a whole movement of people that are trying to make amends. They're trying to benefit off the past without showing any virtue in their own lives. They're just demanding, because of their genealogy, they get something, and they don't even care about being noble today like their ancestors were. And this goes again into serpent seed. Some of you are like, what's serpent seed? Well, I'm not going to really explain it. For those of you who do know, I get this a lot where people are so concerned about what, genealogy they come from. And it's like, okay, whatever. Like I could show you the writings of the Apocalypse of Abraham, where Yahweh says that he will specifically take some from the house of Azazel, who are literally descended from Azazel, and he will move them into his house. And there will be people from the house of Adam who are descended from Adam, and they will be working for Azazel, right? So it's like where you come from doesn't matter. It's all about your virtue. What good is it to the blind that his parents could see? Or what benefit to the deaf that his grandfather heard? That's a clever way to word that. Is this more foolish than that a mean-hearted man who should claim nobility because his forebears were noble? A man who serves the people well has no need of ancestors. The man who does not derive pleasure in receiving honors, but in deserving them. Is it not better that men say, why has this man not been honored by the king, than to ask why he has been? This is a straight up parable right here of Messiah. Remember, he says that you go over to a guest of a house. There's a party. There's this whole table, all these seats. He says, you don't know where you're assigned. Never go to the seat of honor. Go to the least of the seats, the very, very least. And it is far better to be noticed there. Maybe you won't be noticed. And that's the fear, right? That's the fear why people will put themselves on the throne so they can be noticed, because it's never going to happen otherwise. But it's far better to be noticed in that least of the seats, and for the master to say, hey, come and sit over here in the seat of honor, or in a better seat, than to be in that seat of honor and be like, nope, sorry, get up, you need to go down there. That's the only seat that's left down there at the end. And now you're disgraced, right? So let me read this again. Is it not better that men say, why has this man not be honored by the king? So it is better for you to go through your whole life and not be honored. And perchance, instead of honoring yourself, someone goes like, wait a second, this guy, he's not getting the recognition he desires. Then to ask why he has been. It's like, what, dude, why are you such a big deal? Because, you clearly have not done anything to earn it. I speak to knights. Here it is, knights. I speak to knights who surely of all men are the most noble. So this is a rule of knighthood here. I was actually promising my sons that I would be addressing this passage right here. Eat slowly and with good manners, even if alone at the table, even if there's not a lady present or other people. Always be in control of your actions, even when you think nobody is around to see you. Be the master of your own soul, the knight of your own soul. Do not gulp down ale or water, for food hastily eaten sits on an uncomfortable stomach, but it's also unpleasant to watch for the people around you. Though we must feed our bodies, even as animals have to, we are not as they, and must do so with good manners. Like, we're recognizing that we're something different and above the other animals, right? This is also a knightly discipline which will enhance the light of your soul. Isn't this amazing, guys? Like, this is the whole thing about chivalry, and when you're reading like Arthurian literature and stuff like that, yes, there is this kind of outward appearance of this kind of masculinity of, in shape, soldier. Definitely there's that. But it's like all of that is useless if these knights they could be the most badass knights, and they're not masters of their own soul. It always ends in their destruction, right? And the ones that overcome are those that can control, and they can become better men. They're courteous to the ladies. They take care of the needy. This soul has an inner stronghold, an unassailable keep, which remains impregnable against all outside influences. It is an inner zone of silence, so that even in the most crowded street, amid the din of commerce, the hustle and hassle of everyday life, and joy, sorrow, success, and failure, there is always an inner sanctuary, a place of retirement, a retreat to which one can always retire, assured that no intruder can assail anyone there. This is the citadel of the soul. Some of you might find this to be nightmarish if you're like, what's the word I'm looking for? You're just a very external person. You don't like to be alone. I enjoy being alone with myself, have that sanctuary. This is the citadel of the soul, against which all the tempests and turmoils of life's storms may beat in vain. Within, all will be serene, peaceful, and secure. And if it is well built, nothing can ever overthrow it. Loyalty is an attribute of the knightly man. Loyalty is not something that is frowned upon, and it's been chucked to the way. Nobody cares about loyalty anymore. I shouldn't say nobody, but it's just it almost seems gutted from our society. Even in the religious game, like, it's like somebody disagrees with you on a doctrine, loyalty gone. Just throw them to the waste. Like this type of chivalry, it's not there anymore. It's completely gone. Where is that? You think about like the idea of in British society where you actually had these butlers, these servants, and to the end of their days, these servants they could get up and walk away. They weren't slaves, but they dedicated themselves their entire lives to just serve their master, polishing their shoes, making sure all the lint is off their suits, and polishing, dusting the house and cleaning everything and cooking and just, making sure they're on schedule, all this kind of stuff. They're just, they are loyal. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but just where is the loyalty with friends anymore? It just oh man, it's gotten pretty bad. It is expressed in deed and service. Be audacious in confrontation. It is a bold mouse that pulls the cat's whiskers. Reminds me of Tom and Jerry. Be renowned for what you achieve, not for what you are. The renown of a bowman is not earned by his bow, but by his aim. Those who seek to shun the battle of life because of cowardice or selfishness find that their attempts to run away are in vain, for the law compels them to engage. Because human destiny, individual and collective, is bound to the rock of the law. That which is avoided is enforced. And this is one of the confrontational things about the Torah, where it's like you have to punish the evildoers, to the point like the weaklings look at that and go like, oh, I don't like that. They'll say that the Torah is wicked because you have to. It's like, no, you have to confront wickedness. You cannot allow it to continue, or else your entire society will crumble with it. I come before the dire days to carry a sword against evils which threaten our race, and to direct the struggle of man into correct channels. Be true to yourself and answer according to your own inner knowledge. Are your God-given qualities which all possess marshal to carry out the designs of God? The rallying call has sounded, and its echoes in every responsive heart. Arm yourself for the fray with the God-given powers within. Align them to fight on the side of good. The call has gone out, and the inner forces of every real man, is that interesting? This is the Book of Britain now. They're still talking about the real man, are required to rally to the cause of humankind. If everyone in the world will rally their own special forces within your, the goodness of your soul, and throw these into the battle on the side of good, the earth would overflow with goodness. And of course, that is, again, the story of the millennial kingdom and the downfall, the degradation of the millennial kingdom when mankind finally rebelled to the law. Men and women are apathetic. Instead of taking up the sword against evil, they stand aside like menials. So evil grows because the real man is becoming kind of the middleman right now. And he's maybe not weak yet, but he's not going out and confronting evil. So evil grows, and the main cause of the present sorry state of the people is man's lack of fighting spirit. So think about this, like even within the truth realm, and a lot of people are really good out there at pointing out the evil. It's like, great, okay, but what are you doing about it? Now, maybe it's in the spreading of the truth and getting people to embrace the truth. But what about, there are people out there that are actually doing something about it. We've seen that recently within the last year, particularly, I guess you could say within the elections cycle. And it seems like a lot of people are kicking back against that. And it's like, no, get out there and fight against the evil out there. Like, this is our moment to rise up and say, we are not going to be putting up with this wickedness anymore. Instead of just like almost liking it to persist so that we can keep pointing it out and justifying, in war, it is the cause that counts, and it is not enough to resist evil. It must be attacked. I mean, that's what a true knight does, right? A true man, he attacks evil. When you have conquered the weakness within yourself and assumed full control, there's the knight on his horse, you are a true knight ready to go out and fight. The trumpet has sounded, and the rallying cry rings out. So do not seek the place of protection. Do not hesitate in this dramatic hour. Say not that these things foreshadow things in days far ahead, or that they are residue from the past. Cease all disagreement among yourselves. Unite as comrades in arms. Do you get that? Like, so you unite with people who you actually disagree. Can you believe that? Like, you would actually unite with someone you actually disagree with them on points. You actually find things like, and this is what I like. I get so excited that there is this a pushback and attack against like the trans culture. Like, people have risen up and say, we are not going to allow our children to be, sold into this like MK Ultra social design program to make them all, mutilate them and make them all gay and stuff like that. Like, they're rising up against it. And I'm excited about this. I'm excited about more and more people in the West recognizing the toxins and wanting to get rid of it. All this, I could go on and on and on. And then I always encounter the people like, yeah, but Noel, what about the Freemasons? What about NASA? What about, the Illuminati? It's like, you know what? Yeah. Or what about Zionism? And I still see Roman control. Yeah. You know what? We're not there yet, but we can still unite together. Please don't misread me. I'm saying to unite with the Freemasons. Okay. That's not what I'm saying. We can still unite together as people and have a lot of differences. But if we agree on the same thing, let's do it. Let's take out the bad guys, right? Let's end the wickedness, destroy the wickedness. We'll work on one thing at a time. There will, of course, be arguments and differences. Oh, gee, you think? But be men enough not to let them divide you. You get that? If you're letting these differences divide you, you're not man enough. That's what it says right here. We are in our present sorry state because of past disunity and disobedience to what? To the law. That's amazing. It's so true. You could put the Torah there. That is why we are in our present state, in our diaspora right now, because of our disunity and disobedience to the Torah. 100%. Do not allow the knights of right to be disarmed and fight against the realm of darkness. So armed, make sure everyone is armed. And we're talking spiritually here, not just what it's not, we're not talking about, for the FBI listening to this recording right now. We're not talking about a physical revolution right now. Wink, wink. We're talking about fighting the realm of darkness, the forces of darkness. It is a manifest thing that kingdoms divided against themselves are destroyed by more united forces. Yet is not the kingdom of God divided against itself? Truth and faith are the handmaidens of love. They bring confidence. And how can a man stand steadfast unless he has confidence? For in confidence is strength. The qualities of knighthood are such that those who have them can look the world in the eye. They have no furtive deeds to hide within, where they eat away at a knight's integrity. Praise no day until nightfall, no wife until she is buried. I'd have to maybe look a little bit closer at that one. It's like, you really want a chance not praising your wife until she's dead and buried? Okay, like that's got to be saying something else there, because they just went through like the whole thing on the beauty of women. No sword until bloodied, no maid until married, and no ale until drunk. Never be a talebearer, for this is despicable in a man. Like a gossiper, slanderer. Persons who within themselves are really enemies often come garbed as friends. And among these are the following: he who takes little care to hide his intentions to rob or violate and does it brazen-faced. He who gives a little with the intention of getting much back in return. He who puts on a friendly front out of fear, and he who acts friendly to serve his own ends. And those can be really hard, when you have people, you don't really know if they're loyal or not. Are they really just there to serve their own ends? And when they realize that they're not going to be served anymore, they just cut the line and they're gone. It does happen a lot. The man with the will-greased mobile tongue can be distinguished in this manner. He is inclined to talk much about himself and his past accomplishments, or he will fill your ears with boast about his future deeds. He assails your ears with empty words and with the sweet draught of flattery. Walk wearily, for these are false-fronted friends, and when their friendship is put to the test, it falls apart like rotten wood. When called upon for assistance in time of need, They plead their own misfortunes and handicaps as excuses for standing aside. This goes on a lot longer. Try to think here if I should. There's so much here that's so good. I might even pick this up next week and just talk more about this. Like chapter 9, Shards of Wisdom. I'm coming up on the top of the hour of the second hour. I'd like to end it here. Just give you all some sanity. So I'll see how this is received. Because I love reading this stuff. If you would like more of this, we'll do this again next week. If you want to, move on to another topic, because I got a lot of topics I want to cover, do let me know. And I'll kind of gauge what I do next week based on your responses in the comment section. I also know if you made it all the way to the end, because I would love to talk more about family relationships, of how true men or weaklings deal with daughters, with mothers, with fathers, and so on and so forth. So with that, we're going to end it tonight, and I hope everybody has, whenever you keep your Sabbath, maybe it's tonight and tomorrow, I just hope you have a good work week. There's something about working those 6 days and being just I know my wife, she worked hard this week. I mean, really, really, really hard. And I did too. We both worked really hard, and we're just like excited. When I turn this off, it's like Sabbath time. It is like rest time. I can't wait for the next 24 hours. This is my weekend, right? This is my time of rest. I hope you guys have a great Sabbath. Hope and good work week ahead. Love you guys. We'll do this again.
If you had the power to go back in time and choose to give into a ministry that would effectively change the way the world sees an idea, would you do it? I think the answer is yes. Well, you don't have to go back in time. What you can do is right now, you can click the link below and give to the Paleo-Hebrew translation effort. What is this? Well, Paleo-Hebrew is the ancient form of Hebrew. When you write Hebrew out, you build it. If I said H2O, you know that I mean water. That's what building a language is. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, they all have this idea, even Paleo Babylonian, the Paleo-Egyptian, the hieroglyphics, petroglyphs. They have this idea that when you put a certain group of pictures together, it means a word. That's what Paleo-Hebrew was. That's what Paleo-Hebrew is. Pamela Glasgow is changing the way that we view the scriptures. You can help. You can go ahead and click the link below and find out how you can change your life, your study of the Bible, your children's life, your children's children, and everybody the whole world, man, the whole world can benefit greatly from this. And you can have the power to help right now. All you got to do is click it and give. And it's good to give. What does the Bible say? James says, what is good religion? That I defile not myself with the world, then I give to the widows and the orphans. Well, we're working on number one. Sorry, number two. Well, both, actually. We're working on not defiling ourselves, so hopefully you're working on that too. I'm working on that. But we can give to the widows. And the widows, she's right there. And she's doing a work for you, for us, for the whole world. And we have the power to effectively change the paradigm of how we've seen the scriptures from time immemorial to tomorrow. So do that. All right, be blessed and not stressed.